Okay, everyone, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have an amazing, joyful person here to encourage us, build us up, and inspire us today. We're going to talk all things podcasting, many different things around launching your show and some questions around that. Tiffany's here with me today, and I'm so excited to have Tiffany Bell on the podcast. And you're going to meet probably one of the nicest people you'll ever meet here on the show today. Tiffany, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dave. I am so excited to be here. I'm just ready to dig into this. It's just such an exciting topic.
So again, I want to remind everyone that this is a co-hosted episode. We're here together to have a conversation. And in our conversation, we want to inspire you as a listener, encourage you to start your show, create your podcast, share your story. Tiffany, before we jump into some of our topics today, tell everybody where you are. You have an amazing story and you help a lot of people. So I'd like to kind of start there and honor you as my co-host. Let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. So I am super fortunate. I am married to one of the most amazing men in the world. And him and myself have a ministry called Yielded Life. And what we do, Dave, is we just travel and preach and tell people about yielding our lives to God and what he'll do with them when you do. And it's as simple as that. And we've been working in prisons and just addiction recovery places and itinerant ministry. We are willing to travel all over because we are so excited about the movement through a message God has given us in just yielding. And it's something we need to do today. So often we want to handle everything on our own. And if we'll just yield and let God handle it, man, we'll be so much more stress-free and so much more productive. So, man.
Awesome. I love it. Now, we have a lot of podcast creators, hosts, looking for great guests like you to come on their show. Who would you be a great guest for on a podcast?
You know, I really specialize in a recovery mentality, not necessarily from drugs, but from life. I have been divorced as a child. I went through some sexual abuse. I know what it's like to have an alcoholic parent who went to prison. I know what it's like to be a single mom and then remarried and see the fullness of all the prayers you've prayed come to fruition. And so I would love to share my heart with, I'm a champion of the underdog, Dave. Anybody who goes, I can't make it, those are the ones I want to talk to because I thought I couldn't either. And the Lord has really just done such a marvelous work in my life. I'd love to share it with someone.
Okay, that's amazing. I know I can think of many people I'd love to introduce you to, and we'll work behind the scenes to make that happen and get you on their shows.
Absolutely.
Because I think you're going to bring so much value and you're going to help so many people. In addition to what you've already done, there's more to come. And maybe podcasting is going to be the next thing for you and your husband to expand that message beyond where you can physically travel to. You can share your message with the world. So talk about your idea for a podcast. What are you thinking about doing?
You know, I have a simple little show on Facebook Live called Coffee and Tea with Tiffany. And it really started, Dave, out of something so simple. I moved to Arizona recently in the last 2 years. So I am in the hottest city on earth, I feel like. I'm in the city of the sun. And I moved from South Carolina. And I say that because, in the South, we sit on porches and we drink coffee and tea and we communicate. Well, when I got here, I moved to a busy city and it wasn't happening. And I was like, how do I do this? I just wish I had someone just to have a cup of coffee with. And I realized I did. I had a ton of people online. And so every Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., I get up and I have coffee and tea and we talk about an hour about the goodness of God, what he's doing in our city, town, and our hearts. And we just drink coffee and tea together. And so that has been just such a fun thing. My husband and myself also have a Tuesday evening program about 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday evenings called Yielded Life. And what we do is we sit together, we talk about the hottest topics, and you get to hear both that husband and wife, we're both pastors, you get to hear that point of view of going, hey, how do we work together? How do we work together as a married couple for the kingdom? So, yeah.
Nice. So you're already used to being in front of an audience,
yes,
speaking and sharing content with the world. I love it. So now the idea of a podcast, where did it come to you to say, hey, maybe a podcast is next for us?
So here's the thing, the Lord really just started kind of swirling in my heart a little something about a year ago of, hey, you should start a podcast. And I was like, I don't really have time. Well, I did that same delayed obedience with Coffee and Tea with Tiffany, and I've seen such joy come out of that. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to drag my feet on this. I want to figure this out. I'm in the middle of writing a book, Dave. I'm in the middle of my testimony. And so I'm kind of like, okay, God, when's the now? When's the now? Is the now season to start this? But I am nothing more that a Southern woman likes to do than to talk to people. So I think I'm cut out for this. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, I love it. So before we hit record, you threw some great ideas for some talking points today that we can kind of direct our conversation. We'll see where we go with this, but one of the ones right off the bat that you were talking about was like when to launch your podcast and what you need and how many episodes you need and all of that information around launching your show. From your perspective, what are your thoughts? What are your concerns around launching your podcast, and what kind of stuff are you interested in getting information about?
I had this mentality, you watch things and you listen to podcasts and you see them on, all these various social platforms. And I see the very simple to the very extreme. And I kind of just felt like, what would it be like if I had a sound system, just something, middle of the road that worked, but just made it feel like you were in my living room and we just had conversation. I don't know, Dave, that I'm in the place to go, I need the best, most expensive things. I wouldn't even know where to get them. And so I'd have to call you back and ask you where to get them. But I'm just thinking, could it possibly be that this is a way to really unite with people from all over the world? And it can be done in a simple way. So that's where I'm at. As I have kind of sought some advice on it, you just get a myriad of answers. And so I come to the guy. They said Dave will know. So I come to the guy.
I love it. Okay, well, there you go. That would be me, I guess. I'd love to help you with this. We talked about this. You can spend $0 and start a show, and you could probably spend a lot more than that to start a show. And I think we were talking about, there seems to be either it's free or it's really expensive,
right,
but there's nothing really in the middle. All right. So for me, I'll tell you roughly my setup. The microphone I'm talking into plugs directly into my computer. It's a $50 microphone on Amazon.
Right.
It comes with this thing which is protecting between my voice and my microphone, this little screen, which helps with plosives, which are those, if you put your hand in front of your mouth and say peanut butter, you can feel the air from your voice. As a speaker, you know this. Okay. It'll hit your hand and you can feel that. Without something in between your voice and the microphone, those plosives will hit the microphone like a little cannon. And for your listeners, it's quite distracting to have that pea sound or peanut butter, to hear that in your ears, because you have headphones on or earbuds, so you're in their ears. So anything like that that's distracting might make people kind of go, I can't really follow the content because I'm being distracted by something that's pulling me away from what you're talking about. So for $50, that's all you really need to get started. So that's one thing I would say. Don't let technology and microphones stop you from starting a show. You can actually do it with your phone. The microphone in your phone is amazing, and it has everything you need. You can always go up as things get better and as things improve and you want to move up, but you don't have to go with the top of the line expensive studio. And what I like to do is I like to encourage everyone to start in audio podcasting first, because it's the less equipment to purchase. I have 2 big lights that are in front of me. I have my microphone stand. I've got video cameras. I got all that stuff. They all cost money to do a video podcast. Right. But an audio podcast seems to be more accessible to people around the world who maybe don't have the bandwidth or the data to download a video podcast or stream it live and watch it. An audio podcast is smaller in file size and accessible to more people. So if you want to reach the most amount of people to start, audio is a great way to start. And then if you want to do video, you can add that as well. But I think the learning curve for a lot of new podcasters, they feel overwhelmed by doing a video podcast. Like they have to do that. That's the only way they can do it. You can do an audio podcast for relatively very little money and reach a huge audience globally. So that's kind of my starting point.
That's such good feedback. I love that tender reminder because we do want to reach people, right? And I love the thought of the bandwidth. That's something I had not thought of as someone who's, a newbie to newbies. I had not thought of that. And man, I love that feedback. It's so encouraging. I love that. It'd be a lot easier to accomplish as well, to be able to just send auto out. That's so good, Dave. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And so what we do is when we record our podcast, we record into a microphone, into our computer, or whatever we're using to record our podcast with. And then we have to give that episode to a host who then distributes it for us.
Right.
So I don't go directly to Apple as a podcaster and give them my podcast and say, "Hi, Apple, my name is Dave. Here's my show." They'll be like, "Who are you and why are you here?"
Right.
I don't do that to Google. I don't do that to Audible. I don't do it to all these different listening apps.
Okay.
What I do is I give it to my host, and then my host does the work for me, and through what's called an RSS feed, really simple syndication it stands for.
Oh.
They send it out like a radio show into the world to all these different apps. They come to my host to get my podcast, and then they take it back to their platform and distribute it for me for free. I don't have to charge. I don't have to pay Apple and Google, and no, it's all free. So what I do is I have my host do that work for me, and you have a choice as a podcaster to have a free host. There's free hosting out there. It's called Spotify for Podcasters.
Okay.
And what happens is you give your episode to them and they distribute for you, or you can go with a paid host like a Libsyn. That's one hosting site. There's Buzzsprout. There's many. Podbean. There's a lot of different places that will do it for you. And when you pay them for their services, they do a little bit more for you as a podcaster, but you have a monthly fee that you have to pay. The only caveat to that is if you stop paying for your podcast hosting, your podcast goes away.
Oh.
Yeah. So when I meet with new podcasters and they're like, I want to do a daily podcast. It's going to be video. It's going to be huge file size. It's going to be really expensive. And I want to go with a paid host. And then after 3 months, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. The moment you stop paying for your hosting, it's gone.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Free hosting is great. I have 4 shows on a free hosting site, Spotify for Podcasters. I have to do more work as a host to get things initially set up. But once it's set up, it just runs in the background. I don't have to do anything. So you have some options there. We can have more conversations around that
that's
to help you. But keep that in mind. Do you want to pay every month for a long time? Are you okay with that kind of commitment financially? Or are you looking for something a little different than that?
Wow, these are such good little nuggets just to chew on and go, what do I want to do? It would be heartbreaking to lose the interviews and work accomplished. So I love knowing that. I imagine many people may not have thought that through and probably suffered some consequence. So that's really good to hear up front.
Yeah. And then the other thing you can do is add on YouTube as well. So we talk about how all those sites like Audible, Google, Spotify, Apple, they come and grab our audio content and they take it back to their players and they have it available to their audiences. But then you can also be on YouTube as well. And what I like to do is take my audio formatted podcast and I attach an image to it. So there's an image to the podcast and I upload it to YouTube because YouTube as a user creating content is free. I don't have to pay for that. And I have a backlog history of all of my podcast episodes with no limit. And it's searchable within YouTube so that you can actually have a podcast on YouTube in addition to having an audio podcast that goes out through the audio players. It's kind of a nice mixture of both. So that's another option for you.
That may be a good option for me, Dave. I already have a YouTube channel where, when we film live, it also goes to YouTube. So that would not be a bad idea to start there. I like that.
Yeah. Because people can find you. It's easy to search. And what you're doing on YouTube is you're taking what would be called a playlist, and you put all your episodes into a playlist, and then you rename it, rebrand that playlist as
Oh,
a podcast
okay.
within YouTube. Yeah, and then it's highly searchable as a podcast within the confines of YouTube. It's
That,
a great addition.
okay, I like that. That's really good. I'm
Yeah.
learning so much, Dave. It's
See?
exciting. It's exciting. It makes me
There's
want to
so much,
start today.
right? Okay, so we talked about how many episodes to start with.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think you need? How many episodes do you think you need to have to start a podcast?
See, here's the thing. I have no idea. So when I do our Facebook lives and YouTube lives when they film simultaneously, it literally is live, right? So I don't have anything backlogged. So my thought would be, okay, if you're doing something, I guess it would depend on how you're doing your podcast, but I would think weekly. So if you're doing something weekly or something like that, whatever, how do you do that? Do you go, let me have one or two in reserve in case a guest cancels? I don't know how to handle that. Or I get sick because I imagine real life happens. Or sometimes, I live on this little country road. Sometimes the internet decides it doesn't want to cooperate. What do you do? So I'm all ears.
Right. Yeah. So all you technically need to start a podcast is one episode. That's
Mm,
all you need to start.
okay.
So I know people will tell you need many episodes. It's nice to have them done and ready to go. But for example, let's say you record 10 episodes
Okay.
and you put them out into the world
Right.
and you get feedback from your listeners that maybe there's a part of the show that they would like to see you change
Oh,
or do something different.
right.
And you're thinking, oh, well, I've only released one of my 10 episodes. There's still 9 more coming where I maybe I missed something, right? So now I have 9 more episodes you have to listen to before I can change. So I like the idea of putting out one and just letting my podcast be out there in the world, get some feedback from listeners and people in my community on how I can maybe make it better. Maybe
Hmm.
it's too long, it's too short. Maybe there's something in the episode that could be better. Get that kind of feedback and then start getting into recording more episodes because you're not bound by the bulk of episodes you created in advance. So that's kind of my advice. But one episode is all you need. You need some artwork for your podcast and you need a show name and description. That's it.
You're making me
That's
think
all you
here.
need.
Yeah,
Just
that's
one.
good. Dave, you have such an approach. It's like it feels like you're serving the community. And I love that. I feel like so many other podcasters I've heard, and maybe even my own thoughts, have been more like, okay, well, this is my thing and this is what I'm going to do. I love that you have this like communal mindset of what really works for the people and how can I really engage them and interest them. And so I'm thinking you got all my wheels turning. So that's good. That's great.
um, so to launch your podcast, you need one episode. You need the artwork, the name, description, and if you're going to go with a hosting site, which I recommend, someone to host your audio content, then you need to pick one and decide whether you want to pay for it monthly or if you want to go with the free option. Again, paying for it monthly, you get a support team behind you. They will do a lot of the work for you. There's tools that they provide to you as a
Oh,
paying customer. So you might pay for it in other ways if you don't go with a paid host, where you have to do the time to create and do the work that someone else would do for you if you paid them through a paid host. So you have to balance that out and go, what is more worth your time? Do you have the time to invest it to do it yourself? Or would you rather someone else help you from a paid hosting site
mhm.
to promote your episodes and send them out into the world? So you need to decide that. Once you've made those decisions, what I would suggest is start creating a calendar
Mm.
and an idea folder where you can just start putting your ideas in. Anytime I get an idea, I just email it to myself and I write in the subject line topic and I put whatever the topic is. And every time I get them, I just put them into a folder in my email box and it just says ideas or topics.
Wow.
And when I'm ready to record, I just open that topic folder. I can search it by date or whatever, and I can just start pulling in content that I thought of months ago that I haven't talked about yet. And everything's there for me. And what I love for your podcast in particular, I would suggest that you have guests. That's great to bring them on and talk to them, but then also do solo hosted podcasting episodes where you're just talking like you do for Facebook, and
Right.
speak to your audience and build community.
Mm,
Because when you're a host, people are coming to hear your guest. But
mm,
then when you're doing your own podcast episode, they're coming to hear you and
that's
connect with you. So if you do that and you have a balance between maybe having guests and doing solo,
mm,
is you don't have to record 52 episodes a year,
mm.
one a week. You can cut that in half and do half interview, half solo hosted. So you only have to come up with 20 plus episodes from your library of content and you're done. And I think that's where people get overwhelmed is they think they have to do 52 weeks by themselves. And then they run out of ideas after the fourth week. They don't know what to talk about next. So get a calendar and plan out what you want to talk about in advance.
That's so good, Dave. I think you got the pulse of where I'm at. I definitely would love to share my heart in a solo capacity and alternate with guests. So that kind of cleared that up for me. I was thinking, how do I do that? How do I interact with all these little moving pieces? So that's great. You also set me up, as only radio would have it, for a great segue. Time. This is one of the things that has got me going, oh my, I don't know many of us that aren't bivocational or busy or got families and responsibilities. How do we manage if you produce one show a week, just say, what can I look at that goes into that one show?
Yeah, so try to use the math, and I've heard many people talk about this, and it seems to be quite relevant. They say that if you do a podcast, think about it's going to take 4 times the length of your podcast episode to do all the other stuff that has to go with the podcast.
Oh, wow.
From
Okay.
your planning to your guest interactions to your editing, social media, whatever you're going to do, whatever's all in that encompassing thing for each episode. It's like a 4-to-1 ratio. So if you have a 1-hour podcast you record, it's going to take you about 4 hours for that 1-hour episode to do all the behind the scenes stuff from beginning to end. So that's kind of a good guide. And if you do a video podcast, it's more like 8 to 10 times
Mm,
the amount of time. So a 1-hour video podcast could be, depending on skill level and everything else, 8 to 10 hours
that's a
of
good
work
age,
to
though.
get that out. Yeah. So when you look at that and you say, okay, I want to do a daily podcast, they're 1 hour each,
Mm.
and it's video. Wow. That's a lot of commitment right out of the gate to commit to at the beginning. There's a lot going on there. So I like to pull people back to the audio side and go, maybe not once a day, 7 days a week. That might be a little overwhelming. But sometimes people will do 1 episode a month,
Mm.
1 episode every 3 months. Like, it doesn't have to be weekly. It's nice if it is because your listeners get into a routine of hearing your voice. But there's really no rules. No one's going to come to your house, Tiffany, and say, you're podcasting incorrectly. We're taking your show away.
Right. It kind
There's
of feels like that, though. But yes, you're right. You're right.
Right. I don't have a boss here behind me telling me to do my job and do my podcast. I can take a break anytime I want. I can slow down. I can speed up. I can do as many episodes as I want. So once you get into a routine, that 4-hour window becomes smaller because you have tools in place, you have repetition, you are learning, and that window will get smaller. But at the beginning, it's kind of a 4-to-1 ratio. So what can you give up in your week right now that will give you 4 hours a week to commit to this?
Probably
and kind of think about that. Yeah. There you go.
No more Amazon shopping. Really, though, it does give you some sort of compass, if you will, of going, okay, this is the realistic commitment level that I need to do. And, when we think about 4 hours, it kind of seems like a lot, but I don't imagine you have to do it all in the same block if you didn't have it. I love that. I love that you're saying, hey, there's freedom in this. So you're taking off some of the stress. You did pop my balloon a little bit when you said that if I did it every day, the hours. So I'm like, okay, hold on. We might not can commit to every day quite yet. But I love that. So it kind of gives me something to bounce off of and go, I think I can do 4 hours a week. I can commit to that, but I might not can commit to 40 hours a week right now. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I think new podcasters seem to be afraid of the commitment level to their audience.
Sure.
Where they decide to go with maybe like a season approach where they do like 10 episodes and then they take a break for a few months. You can do that as well. That's another way of doing it. But the other way you can do it is just tell your audience, I'm going to be traveling for the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to be able to record any episodes. I would love for you to go back and listen to one of the other older episodes, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
That's great. Yeah.
Your audience will be completely fine with that. I don't think there's going to be too many grumpy people who are like, Tiffany missed 1 week. I'm never coming back. Right? That's not going to happen. You have a great community that love you. They really come for your content. They love you as a host. They're very patient. So don't worry about, I've got to be consistent. I have to do every single week or else I'm going to fail. It's not about failing. It's about your health, your mental health, your physical health, and just the fact that you have a life.
Right.
So don't be afraid to take breaks. Just let your audience know what you're doing and keep them in the loop. It's when podcasters don't communicate and all of a sudden we just disappear. And every week I listen to Tiffany's show. I go to my phone and there's no show this week. Tiffany always releases every Monday morning at 8 a.m. It's Tuesday and I still haven't heard. I'm going to send her a message. Tiffany, are you okay? Like, I'm waiting for your show and you're not here. And I'm concerned for you because I'm a community member. Are you okay? Right? Just let your audience know. I'm just taking a couple of weeks off. I'm going to be away and I'll catch you in October.
Wow.
That's fine. You can do that. So that reduces the stress level.
That does.
Right? And your community will be fine. They'll be fine.
You're making this too easy. All right. This is good. So speaking of community, one of the things that I really don't feel like I know enough about, how do you find your guest? How do you, short of putting a classified ad out, how do you find them? How do you vet them once you find them? Because I can't imagine that at least once you go through all the interesting people, you have to kind of expand your borders and find some more interesting people. So how does that work?
I love to go where my audience is. So for me, for my How to Podcast series, and I think that's how we connected. Is I like to go in podcasting groups. For my show, because I have new podcasters saying, hi, I want to be a guest, or I'm looking for a guest. I have a podcast. It's about this. I reach out and I'm like, hey, would you like to talk about your show on my podcast and promote your podcast? And let's have a conversation about podcasting. And everyone says yes, because they want to talk about their show.
Oh, okay.
So I just go to where my future guests would be hanging out and talk to them there and be part of the community. Give great advice and suggestions and great support and be an active member of the community. And then people are like, who is this Tiffany person?
Right.
She's always coming and bringing great value. She's so encouraging and uplifting, and she's always positive. She never talks down to people. I feel great when she pops into our Facebook group. I want to know more about you. And then I find out you have a podcast. That's it. I want to be on your show, or I want you on my show because you're a great community member. So that's one way to do that, is just get in there and do life with the people who talk about the things that you want to talk about. It's a great way to build relationships. Gosh. The other thing I would suggest, go to Amazon and look up authors in your area, what you're talking about, because they have new books.
Wow.
And they're launching new books about the topic you talk about every week. So reach out to them and say, hi, it's Tiffany. I have a podcast. I love the new book you just released this week. I would love to have you on my show because I'm talking about this and my audience is all about what you wrote about.
Wow.
And I'd love to introduce you to my audience because I think your book would add value to their life. So if you come on my podcast, let's promote your book. And I want to know more about you and your story. The other thing, you can look at the table of contents in their book. And those are all ideas for future episodes of your podcast around the topic you talk about. So you look through that table of contents, you're like, I never thought to talk about that. And it's a part of this person's book. I'm going to bring them on and talk about it. And as well, I'm going to do my own episode around that title of chapter 5. That's something I've never talked about, but I really want to. That might be the spark for you to create your own content using their chapter title. That could be a new episode for you on your show. And it's all there for free. It's a great way to make connections. And then follow them on social media. You reach out to that author.
Okay.
And I wrote a book around your topic. You pop up on my Instagram. All of a sudden, here's Tiffany. She's liking my posts. She's leaving me messages in my Instagram. And then she emails me and says she'd like to have me on her show. I'm going to notice you and remember you because you added value to me as a guest before you even asked me to come on your show.
Oh, I love that. I love the integrity of that. So often we make things so marketing and that kind of stuff. And I'm not really about that, Dave. I'm really about the relationship and an integrity. And so I'm probably the type of guest that'll call you in a week and go, "You doing okay?" So I really love that this is really painting the picture of community. And so I'm loving that. I'm loving the support that you're offering. It has really alleviated a lot of the things that have made me go, "Oh, I can't possibly start now because I don't have all my ducks in a row," And so that's really helpful.
Yeah, there's one person I heard of, very interesting story. He wanted to create a podcast about the outdoors.
Oh.
And he wanted to share ideas of where you could go for traveling and trips and places you could go visit as an outdoor podcast. The one thing he said, though, Tiffany, is I'm going to start the podcast after I buy my first boat.
Oh.
He's never bought a boat, and he's never started his podcast.
Yeah.
Right. So he put something between him and the idea behind his show. And because that thing blocked him, he's never, ever pursued the podcast. So what I hear from podcasters is the microphone is in between me and recording an episode. The money is in between me and recording an episode. I'm afraid to share my story or my voice. I'm afraid of my voice. I'm afraid that people are going to judge me for having a show. And that stops them from moving forward. So whatever we can do through our interactions or listening to other podcasters that can eliminate those things that stand between us and our audience and starting our show, that's what I'm focused on, because I think everyone has a story. And what you do and what your husband, the two of you do together, there's so many people who could be touched by your message far beyond what happens on Facebook and what you're doing right now. That's amazing. That's a moment in time. And if I'm not on Facebook, for example, I'm not going to see or hear or experience your community because I'm not there. But I have a phone, and my phone can connect to anything, anywhere. And I can hear your show when I'm driving to work. I can hear your show while I'm walking my dog in the neighborhood, right? I can have you with me anytime and have access to you and your message any time of the day or night. Years from now, I can listen to your episode and still be inspired. It's not like it's just a moment in time. I was a minister for many years. I'd get up on stage on a Sunday and speak. And if you weren't there, you missed it.
That's right.
Unless you bought the recording, you didn't hear it. You weren't there. You didn't experience it. And that message gone. It's done. So now we have a new platform. And this platform is 365 days a year, 52 weeks a year. Any place in the world without borders. People are going to listen to our episode in Africa. Like in Africa, they're going to hear us talking about podcasting.
Wow.
I have listeners in India, Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, listening to you and I have this conversation. That is amazing and such a great opportunity to reach many people. And what you're doing and what your heart is, the world is yours. You can reach so many people through a podcast.
That's so humbling and awe-inspiring. And, my heart is for the nations. So that just makes my heart pound to be able to know that somewhere, somehow, you may be used to bring a little hope, a little light to somebody's situation, whatever it is. So that's huge. Dave, I feel like I'm going to start my podcast today. I may have to leave this to go start. It is just, you are a wonderful encourager. You are not wasting any of your gifts doing what you do. And so I'm so blessed that somehow we got in each other's path so I could hear these words, because you're right. Every roadblock you have mentioned, I have written down. I'm like, oh, I would, but this. And so today has really removed a lot of the this for me. And I hope a lot for a lot of other people that may be listening.
Right. Yeah. And I think being a podcaster is a very humbling experience to get to share messages with people and bring people like you on and introduce you to the world, to the world that's following my show. It's very humbling. And I think there's been a little bit of arrogance in podcasting where people feel like they know all the answers to podcasting. And if you don't do it their way, you're doing it incorrectly. I'm trying to balance that out with, you can do it for free. It might not be the best quality starting out, but you've started where many people can't even start. You've started a show. You've got on your telephone, your cell phone, and you recorded an episode with your phone. Yeah, it's not going to be amazing when you compare it to some of the shows that have a team of 20 and $10,000 per episode for funding. I have my phone. Like, it's a very different scale, right?
Sure.
But I can always improve. I can always get better. And as this podcast grows and my community grows, you never know. Your community might say, hey, Tiffany, love your podcast. I want to buy you a microphone because I know you can't afford this right now.
Right.
I want to send you a microphone.
Wow. What
my thanks to you for creating great content for me as a listener. I want to love and support you. What can I do to support you?
This is such a huge thought. It is so presenting a different idea of community. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but we can think community is the people at our table or at our backyard. And it's really not. This world just seemed to open up so big in this conversation. And so it's really exciting to think about who could be a new part of community. You know, whose community could you become a part of? And so that is just amazing. That's an amazing thought.
And you can open it up to your community and say, hi, everyone, I'm starting a podcast. I need some help. I need someone to do my artwork for me. Can somebody design it for me and just send it to me? And I'll thank you on the podcast, because I just don't have the bandwidth, or I don't have the skills, talents, and ability to do that. And I'm leaning on you and my community. Can anyone please help me with this? Can someone help me with helping me find guests? I would love if someone in my community can just do that for me. I'll tell you what we'll meet. I'll tell you what I'm looking for as a guest. And if you could just go out and find me some guests in our area, in our community, I would love for you to help me with that. And again, I'll help you and support you and thank you on the show. Your community will love to step forward. I have on my website, it's called Buy Me a Coffee. It's a free thing you can set up, and your community can donate to you. Last week, I had 2 people separately send me 5 coffees each, which is $25 each. $50 just showed up in my email.
How cool.
It was totally anonymous. I don't even know who they were, but how kind of them to do that. So just make it easy for people to be a part and donate and support you. Give them options. You can create a list on Amazon of all the things that you need and share that list just like you would for a wedding, for a bridal registry. Share the list from Amazon and say to your community, here are the things I need for my podcast. I'm just going to leave it out there for you. And if you can help, they can buy and ship it straight to your house and you don't have to worry about it.
That's incredible. Dave, you're blowing out the water all of our excuses. We're just going to have to be obedient. There's going to be no more excuses. I would have never thought to do that. I would have thought, if this is in your heart, this is for you to do alone. And man, what a way to start community by involving community. That's huge. That's amazing. Yeah.
And then you just bring them along with you on the journey. Your community wants to support you. Your community wants to love on you and give you the tools to do a great job because they already know you have changed lives. They already know that. And they know that having a podcast will take you to another level of doing that and help more people. And as a community member, they just want to be a part of that. So if you say, I need help, or here's a way to help me, that just gives them that little push to go, you know what? Tiffany has been there for me every Monday morning. I love what she does.
Oh,
I've never supported Tiffany before. I've never thought she needed help. But now that she's said it, you know what? I have never thought of that. I need to support Tiffany. And I want to give and I want to support her. And all it takes is just ask.
That's so good. This is reshaping my plan. This is reshaping my launch because, knowing that there's some freedom to invite community and possibly collaborators that may just want to jump in and show their gifts and talents and a simple on-air thank you. That's it doesn't even seem like enough, and yet for some it will be. And so that's wonderful. That is so empowering, liberating. Really, that's great. Thank you for that.
You have a library of content. You have a community you've already built.
Yeah.
You are way far ahead than many podcasters thinking about starting a show.
Oh, wow.
Just because you've already done all the work behind the scenes already. So you can leverage your community, tell them about your new podcast that's coming soon, and watch them support you. I think you'll be quite surprised. And you'll be quite honored to see them step up and share their thoughts with you as you do this journey. I'm excited for you.
I am too. Thank you. Yeah, that is definitely just pushing the zeal forward and going, okay, I think this may be the thing, guys. And of course, somebody who has a show named Coffee and Tea. I love the fact you can buy a cup of coffee. Come on, what gets better than that? Listen.
And maybe there's a coffee company out there looking to sponsor a podcast, and they're like, "Hey, Tiffany, I would love to send you free coffee, or I would love to give you money towards your podcast." You never know, right?
That's incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. You just opened up the whole sky's the limit thing. And I love that because I think you almost have to have some of that. And, Dave, we had talked a little bit, and it's like anything else. And I'll give this kind of thought. As a woman, when you are about to have a baby, people will often share advice. And it's always the ones that'll say, I was in labor for 745 hours and I had to walk in the snow to have the baby. That gives you the advice, right? And I feel like when I first started kind of going into the podcast chat rooms and communities and saying, hey, I am stumbling headfirst into this. What's your thoughts? And there was some kind of feedback that really wasn't as empowering. And honestly, it kind of shut the door. I was like, they're right. This is going to cost money. It validated every concern. But today has changed all of that because it really has sparked hope. And I hope it has for others as well. I trust that it has, because honestly, it doesn't sound like I have to be a millionaire. It doesn't sound like I have to be the most gifted and talented. Where I lack, someone else is going to come in. And that has provided a piece to the process that I didn't have before today. And so I'm super grateful for this interaction today. It's been life-changing, very rewarding. So
it's amazing. And I know we have more things we wanted to talk about. So what I'm offering to you is I want to continue this conversation.
Yes.
If that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Would you consider coming back? And because I know there's other things we wanted to talk about today, but I want to honor your time as well. Would you consider coming back and continuing the conversation?
I would. It's done. It's already done. This has been so good for me. I'm coming back with a pad and pen next time because I need to take all these notes. I'm going to have to listen to the podcast again. It's been so good.
There you
go. I'd be honored, Dave. I'd be absolutely honored.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. So we'll do that. we'll set that up and we'll have you back because there's so many things that we can talk about. And again, it's great to have good people in life that we can share their story. Tiffany, before we go, we talked about the beginning, but again, I want people to find you, and maybe they're looking for a great speaker for their next event, or there's someone that's really wants to connect with you and your community.
Sure.
Again, where do we go and how do we do that?
So you can visit our website. It's www.yieldedlife.org. And so you can find us there. You can leave messages if you have an event you think would be a blessing at, myself or my husband together or alone. You can certainly do that. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. Our page is called Yielded Life. We would love to have your interaction. Nothing makes us happier. Same way, you can find us on Instagram, Yielded Life. TikTok, I am doing my best to explore at Tiffany Bell Official. So you can jump online or see my husband at Howard Bell Official. We would love your likes and follows on TikTok. We are entering into that community with our toes. So we would love your welcome.
Good. Awesome, Tiffany. Looking forward to your podcast. We're going to all follow your journey with great expectations. And anticipation, and you have an audience of people ready to subscribe, follow, share your show just by coming on and having a conversation today. We're all here with you as listeners, fellow podcasters, to support you in community and to encourage you to go move forward with your show, because your message is going to help many, many people. So you have all of us listening here now, new members of your community ready to support you. So that's another great reason to start a podcast, is you get to meet all these great people and interact with them. So the globe is listening to you, and we can't wait for your show. So keep us up to date on it and come back. Okay.
What a true blessing. Will do. I will absolutely do that.
Okay, everyone, all the information in the show notes we mentioned, and there'll be show notes there, information as well, and would love for everyone to come back for the next time that Tiffany is here with us to talk about podcasting, and I'm excited to have you back, Tiffany. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll have you back soon, okay?
Absolutely.